Wigs, a short story. Bobby hated everything to do with the shop called Wonderful Wigs, but there are moments when even the most firmly held opinions must be compromised for the greater good. So the greater good and every changing set of circumstances called Bobby to march boldly into Wonderful Wigs Emporium for the balding people of the world. The bald and balding always hate the people who are undeserving of the hair that they have, but sometimes a man needs hair more than he needs his dignity. "Can I help you find your new head of hair?" said a short, blonde saleswoman who clearly did not use the product she was selling. She was the kind of salesperson who was at her best when she could use her second-rate charm to convince overweight, middle-aged men that putting an obvious cheap wig on made them look hot or fun. Bobby was not interested in looking hot or fun. "I need hair," Bobby said tersely. "Are we going for long and dramatic or flirty and fun?" said the saleswoman, whose name predictably was Trish. Trish was bad at many things, but most notably picking up on subtle social cues. This shortcoming, however, made her good at her job. "Any wig will do," Bobby said flatly. "The right hairpiece takes a man and turns him into the best man he can be," Trish smiled triumphantly, proud of herself for coming up with this sage wisdom on the spot. Bobby rolled his eyes and sighed heavily. "Same color as my eyebrows, normal length, nothing particularly noticeable." "What about this one?" Trish asked, annoyed that her usual flirty attitude hadn't worked as it usually did. Most men who came in were awkward and embarrassed at their acceptance that they are just as vain as they had been at 18 years old. This customer was too broken to be bothered. Most men came in for a boost on a failing ego in the face of impotence and death. This customer seemed half dead already. "That'll be fine. The woman I'm trying to fool doesn't have much of an eye for detail." Bobby knew this would aggravate Trish more, which is why he said it. She was going to get the commission. He wanted that small victory to be tainted with the belief that she had somehow contributed to hurting someone. The sale went smoothly, if not coldly, after that. Bobby walked out with a bag containing a box containing some hair. He stalked out to his beat-up 1998 Toyota Camry, started it up, and drove off to the Dream Valley Retirement Community Nursing Home. He parked outside of the memory care facility and sat in his car for an hour. The cool air from the old car's failing air conditioning cooling the drops of sweat which were beaded on his perfectly bald head. Bobby waited until the digital clock in his car dashboard moved to 4 o'clock. It was time to go in. He grabbed the box and entered through the double doors. As he walked to the visitor sign-in, he wondered if this would be the last time he ever would. The last time he ever could. His hand trembled as he wrote his name on the check-in sheet. "Hey, Bobby," said the receptionist. "Hi, Mary," he replied, without a flourish. "Bringing gifts? Might not be the best day," Mary said. Somehow receptionists in these places kept tabs on the status of the patients by watching the responses of the nurses and the doctors. "Can't do any harm," Bobby said. She looked at him and nodded in agreement. After seeing him so often over the last few months, she knew that he wasn't in great shape. She knew well enough when not to say anything. Bobby walked over to room 103 without looking at any of the numbers along the way. The door was closed. He stood outside and fumbled with the package, removing the box from the bag, letting the bag fall to the floor. He opened the lid to the box and heard his name called. "Mr. Miller, I'm glad to see you," one of the staff doctors whom Bobby had come to know well approached from behind. "Hi, Dr. Phipps," Bobby replied, without looking up from the box. "Mr. Miller, she isn't doing well today. Maybe you should come back tomorrow." Dr. Phipps patted Bobby's shoulder with tender understanding. "Okay, but can I just try to say hi?" Bobby's eyes pleaded for him, more than his words could. "Of course," said Dr. Phipps, and he walked away. Bobby pulled the wig out of the box, quickly put it on his head, and quietly opened the door. He slowly entered the darkened room and approached the hospital bed, which was the bleak sun around which everything in this tiny room was to revolve. He quietly sat down next to the shriveled figure in the bed. The wig made his head itch. He sat silently and immobile as 10 minutes passed. He started to nod off and was awakened to a hand on his arm and a weak voice. "Bobby?" The voice was quiet. It had been almost a year since he had heard that voice say his name while looking at him. He felt as if his heart would stop. "Bobby, how is baseball today?" she asked. "It was pretty good. I got a hit in the 3rd inning. A double." He spoke with a noticeable tremor in his voice. "Well, that's nothing to be sad about. We should celebrate," the old woman beamed. "You're right, Mom. It's just... He trailed off. Every other time he had lied to this woman, it was because he didn't want to get in trouble, or because he didn't want to disappoint her. He had never guessed that there would be a time when he would lie to her just so she could recognize him. "It's just that I missed you," he finally managed to say. "How could you miss me, Bobby? I'm right here." She smiled. She smiled the smile she always gave, that knowing smile when she was trying to be strong for her boy, even when she didn't understand him. "I love you, Mom," he barely managed to say without sobbing. "I love you." "I love you too, Bobby." She smiled and fell back to sleep. Bobby quietly rose, pulled the wig from his head, and left the room. He walked back to his car and drove home.